Hi folks! I've been asked quite a few times what the steps are makeup wise for my apparently iconic LARP character Mother. I've put this video together to show my process, to talk through what I use to keep it on my face all day and how I go about doing everything in a field. The makeup itself I'm able to do in about 20 minutes give or take, but I've done it a lot of times and I always like to give myself a bit longer than I need because something will always go wrong if you are in a rush. Hopefully you will enjoy this. I'm considering making some more LARP related content, so let me know in the comments below if you want to see that. So we're starting off with this beautiful pan across of all of my makeup and the tools I'm going to be using. I try to keep this to a minimum. I don't want to be dragging my giant makeup kit into a field. I think the only thing that I missed off the lineup is a pot of water. So I like to put my makeup on before I put my kit on. Makeup fallout is a nightmare, especially with loose setting powder, eyeshadow, that sort of thing. And you're inevitably going to drop something on yourself. Mother wears entirely white kit. That's always a problem. Right, so here we go. So before I do anything to my face, I need to get my massive hair out of the way. I've worn a lot of wigs in the past, and the best way I find to keep my sheer amount of hair out of the way in a wig is to braid it up and to wrap it around my head. I sped up the footage quite a bit because I'm sure you don't need to see me braiding my hair in real time. My advice for wigs at LARP is to use a net wig cap rather than the one made from the sort of tights material, because they're far easier to pin through. You want to use as many hairpins as you own to keep it on your head, especially if you've got a huge amount of weight like the horns on this wig. Losing your wig when you hit the floor is the worst thing, so it's always better to be safe. Nothing more immersion breaking than your hair flying off. Having the wig cap also means that if you don't have a lot of hair, the pins still have something to grab onto. And then the glasses are coming off and we're ready to do some makeup. As base layer for my makeup, I use this Mehron, no idea how to pronounce that, Skin Prep stuff. I'm not actually going to put it on this time because I don't have a huge amount left and I don't plan on keeping this on for very long after I filmed it. This is potent stuff. You want to wipe the excess oil off your face before you start, especially if you've got oily skin like I do. You apply it all over with some cotton wool or a cotton pad. It makes this strange feeling, slightly plasticky surface, which is pretty damn resistant to sweat. It does sting a little bit because of the alcohol content. You definitely don't want it in your eyes. My skin always regrets putting this on after the event, but honestly, for the extra longevity it gives your makeup, I think it's worth it. You want to make sure it's completely dry before you move on to putting anything on top of it. So for my white paint, I use the Grimas face paint. I've tried using Snazaroo and Paradise paint in the past, but I prefer this one over both of those. You're going to want some sort of water receptacle. In this case I've got a glass, but I usually use a pot with a screw top when I'm in a field, so I don't really have to bother going to find water first thing in the morning. I tend to use a beauty blender to apply it simply because it's what I have. You can use any sort of sponge really. I definitely recommend using a sponge over a brush for large area coverage. I bought these really cheap beauty blenders from Primark and that was a mistake. I took them to an event for the first time, wet them, dunked them into the paint, and the colour transferred to my paint. Made it a lovely shade of orange. They seem to have stopped doing that now, but just a word of warning if you buy cheap coloured sponges. So I'm going to apply the paint all over except around my eyes, which are getting coloured in later, with the minimal amount of water, just enough to get the paint moving but not enough to make it super sheer. I tried to get it pretty even on the first coat because we're going over with a second layer. It tends to lift off more than it fixes, so try to correct any iffy areas while they're still wet. You want to pat it on your skin rather than dragging it because it gives a more even finish. One of the tricks to face paint is to make sure your skin is well moisturised and in pretty decent condition to start with. Face paint has this habit of clinging to dry skin in a really different way and it looks really patchy. I have this consistent dry patch of skin in the middle of my neck and it is a nightmare to paint. If you want to learn more techniques about applying white paint to your face, I would recommend looking up some Shironuri makeup tutorials. I used to wear this style on occasion and it's a really good base for this sort of character. I tend to get lazy and just smear the paint down my neck at the end. Mother's got enough scars and stuff that I can't really be bothered to paint it properly. Any more effort than just smearing it down feels like a bit of a waste. So after you've got all the paint on relatively evenly, it is powder time. I'm using some Stargazer white setting powder. It comes sort of loose in this little pot. Not only does it set the paint in place a bit better, it works to even out the colour ever so slightly. You want to apply it with a large powder brush and you want to tap it onto your skin. Be as heavy-handed as you want and really sort of get it in there. Here's where things get minimal. I tend to use the same black eyeshadow for all of the shading and contouring on this character, so I have to cart less makeup around with me. I'm sure things would look more natural if I were to have a selection of greys and blacks, but honestly, you're in a muddy field with a bunch of nerds. No one's got time for natural gradients. I apply it around my eyes using a smallish brush in circular blending motions. I tend to increase or decrease the amount of black around her eyes to match what's happening with her mood in game. The more tired, more worn down, generally fed up she is, the bigger the black patches. Got no idea if anyone notices, but it makes me feel better. I prefer to use shadow rather than black face paint because it looks a lot less harsh. Face paint has got some brilliant applications, but I really don't feel like it would have worked for this. So the shadow that I'm using is a Stargazer one. I really like the Stargazer shadows. They're pretty heavily pigmented, even though they're really cheap. They come in these nice individual pots, which are excellent when you only need to take a single colour with you to an event rather than lugging around a massive palette. You can't really go wrong with the Stargazer stuff, to be honest. Everything I've had has been spot on for the price point. So after I've plopped as much of this around my eyes as I feel is appropriate, I switch to this nice angled contour brush. I think it's what it is. I use the same black shadow to very lightly contour my cheeks for that oh so dead look. If you use your cheekbones as a guide, you can get them in pretty much the same place every time. I tend to blend it all the way into my hairline so that the edges disappear under the wig. And the same goes for the top of my forehead. I feel like this makes the line between my face and my wig a little bit less harsh, and that goes back into the hairline as well. Red lipstick is the bane of my existence. No matter what happens, it always ends up somewhere you don't want it. On your teeth, on your chin, any item of kit you own. Luckily, you can usually pass it off as fake blood. So I've got a few different lipsticks that I switch between for this character. I picked up this really bright Avon one for today, and I'm lazy so I never bother to apply lip liner, and I should probably change that. I decided it was a bit too bright for my liking today, so I popped this cheaper, darker one over the top and just blended it in with the stick. We're not being hugely precise here. So after I put the colour on, I use Lipcote. This stuff is incredible. It's a sealant specifically for lips, and it keeps even the cheapest lipstick on all day. It stings when you put it on, especially if you've got cracked lips, because much like all good sealants, it is almost entirely alcohol. Much like LARPers. It should be clear, but I've used it so much with red and black lipsticks that the bottle is tinted. I'm not going to apply it today because, as I mentioned before, I don't plan on keeping this makeup on for very long today, and this stuff is pretty expensive for how little you get in a pot. Now we're moving on to the more delicate stuff. I use this Barry M black eyeliner pencil for the first lot of markings. If you're using an eyeliner pencil, make sure you always have a pencil sharpener in your makeup bag. I've lost count of the number of times I've tried to do this with a blunt pencil, and honestly it's painful. So Mother has 5 lines on her forehead, which I draw all the way up into my hairline so they disappear under the wig. I line the central one up with my nose, and then the outer ones using that as a guide. I then move on to the chin line. I start this one from the bottom and it goes all the way up over the lipstick and into my mouth. This one's a lot easier to do when the lip coat is holding your lipstick in place. And then I'm going to go for these sort of emo tears, which are a relatively new addition, but I quite like them. And then I'm going to shove some into my eyebrows to disguise the fact that they're full of paste paint and they look grey as heck. So we're going to switch to the liquid liner. Again, this is a Barry M one, which I use in my daily makeup. It's the darkest, least flaky and most waterproof eyeliner I've found so far, and it's really cheap. So I'm going to use this for actually lining my eyes, to dark them up a little bit, and then to draw the runes down my face. These are another relatively new addition to the character, and I could spend a while talking about why and how these happened, but now is not the time. I quite often copy these off previous character photos using my phone, but clever old me is using my phone to film today, so we're copying off my hand instead. I draw these using the very tip of the eyeliner, just to get them as neat as possible, but it's never the end of the world if they're a bit wobbly, because Mother's a wreck anyway. Then we're going to throw on some mascara to make myself feel a bit better. This is another Barry M special. It's another part of my daily makeup, and honestly, I bought it because of these cute little roller skates all over the tube. Look at them, they're adorable. And then I'm just going to put a light layer of that on my lashes so they don't stick out like a sore thumb against the super black eyeliner. And now we're going to seal this masterpiece. I use this theatre sealing spray for when I'm in a field. Much like the Skin Prep stuff, it's pretty potent. Look at all those warning labels saying it's terrifying. I don't spray it near a campfire unless you want to have a really bad day. You want to close your eyes as tightly as possible. If it gets in, it's gonna hurt. Keep them closed by your spray, good 4 or 5 times. You should be able to feel it settling on your skin, and you should be able to tell by that if you've missed any spots. So keep your eyes closed tight for the next couple of minutes. This stuff takes ages to dry, and even the fumes are utter hell in your eyeballs. Keep them shut, chill for a minute, contemplate how many players you're going to kill. Characters. Now we are all set, sealed and pretty well waterproofed, we need to kit up. I always put the glasses on before my wig. I've tried getting the chain over my horns and it is a pain. I usually throw on my base layers at this point as well, so I don't have to be stretching any neck holes over my tent catchers. But today I forgot, and that's fine. And with the magic of editing, my wig cap and wig are on. I don't think I could have filmed that. The mighty battle with the hefty beast. We're done. One fully made up and kitted out character. I'm really attached to her at this point. I'm always looking for ways to progress her and her appearance. I think the next edition is going to be some contact lenses. Remember that, much like a real person, your character is never complete. A realistic character is fluid and changeable, they develop and they improve. And hopefully that's answered any questions you had about the makeup. If you've got anything else you want to ask me, make sure you leave a comment and I will endeavour to answer them as quickly as I can. If you want more content like this, or got suggestions for content, let me know down there as well. Like this video, subscribe, do that YouTube stuff. I'm a professional. Have an excellent day, keep playing excellent games, and bye!